Awesome. Thank you so much, Jupiter, for starting this broadcast. And thank you very much, Pastor Graham. I'm gonna have to ask you how you'd like to be referred.
Oh man, you can call me Rob.
Can I? I don't want to.
Yes.
All right, Rob. It's nice saying Pastor. I don't get to say it very often, but I'll call you Rob for this call. And thank you to the folks who are tuning in right now and the folks who tune in later. My name is Manny Akutiel, and these are Manny's Super Civic Cyber Conversations. We have a physical space that is closed, and so we brought our civic programming to you. In this time of need, we've had interviews every single day on a range of civic topics and programs. And I just want to thank you so much for tuning in and for being a part of this. You can tag us at Welcome to Manny's. You can type your questions in to Rob at any time. And let's just dive right into it, all right?
Let's go.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for, I'm sure you're busy. I know you wear a lot of hats, so thank you for taking time to speak to me and answer my questions. So you've got a day job and you're also a pastor.
Oh,
What's going on?
yeah. Let me explain that.
Who
So,
are you? What is going on over there? Are you like Carmen
my
Diego or something? Do you live like multiple lives and you're like Clark Kent, you're Superman, you've got like a day job and then you're Superman? Like what's
oh man, sometimes it feels like that. But no, my wife and I, we are campus pastors at VIVE Church, which is a church here in the Bay Area, many locations, led by our lead pastor, Pastor Adam Smallcomb. And so it's a global church. We got campuses right here in the States, but then also in Milan and Rome, which is pretty cool. And actually, for my day job, I also work at Apple as a software engineer. So engineering solutions, working on software. But I think probably one of the most joy that I get every day is just honestly being a pastor and pastoring those who go to our campus here in San Francisco.
where's the campus?
And so, well, right now, or obviously not in shelter in place, but when we're not in shelter in place in our homes, we meet every Sunday at the Grand Theater right there in the Mission.
The Grand Theater?
Yep, the Grand Theater.
The one down on the
Mission and 26th.
yeah. Where
Yep.
Mission 26. Wait a second.
So it's a
Oh
great
yeah,
area, Grand Theater. Yep.
yeah. So what sect of Christianity is Vive Church? Help me understand.
Mm.
I'm
Yeah. So,
I'm what we call a deep Jew, and so I know I want to teach me. I want to learn.
oh, well, we are non-denominational, but we are Christian. So that means we love Jesus, but we're not so much religious. We actually used to have billboards back in the day that were all around the Bay Area that said, "Not religious, neither are we," because so many people, when you think of church, you think of religion, and that's not very attractive. That's not something that God has called us to, and so we just know that God has called us to build a church and to love people. And so, very much, we're just a church that's open to anyone who wants to grow in their faith and learn more about Jesus.
Wouldn't you say that believing in Jesus is itself a religious act, given it's ascribed directly to Christianity?
Yeah, I think that when you think of any kind of religious act, like going to the gym, working out, you can do that thing religiously, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's religion. I think at least for our church and what we value relationship. And so out of relationship with Jesus, out of relationship with anyone that you have, you start to take on the characteristics of that person. And so when you spend more time in relationship with Jesus, you'll inherently do the things that religion calls you to do anyways. Living a very moral life, loving people, open up your home and welcoming people and letting really love be your highest goal. Those are things that you're just going to do as an outpouring of your relationship with Jesus.
I want to just say on the front end, I have a lot of respect for you and what you do. I'm also a person of faith, and my faith, for those who know me, is very important to me. Can you
Hmm.
believe in Jesus and not be a Christian?
Ooh, man. So I think, the word Christian is very much, it's really centered on Jesus, right? Like Christian
Yeah,
meaning
Chris,
um,
Chris, you know,
having a
he's
relationship.
right in there. He got himself in the
He's
word.
in there. He's in there. And, I think there's very many religions that you can, step into in the world in which you live in,
Yeah.
whether you're Muslim or Jewish or Buddhist or whether you call yourself Christian. But I think Christianity is something that's centered around Jesus. And so if you're like, I believe in Jesus, he died on the cross, and I'm accepting him as Lord of my life, then man, you are very much Christian. Now, if you say, I believe in God, but I don't necessarily believe in Jesus, then I don't necessarily think you would identify yourself as Christian.
I see. It's just hard for us in the Jewish faith because we don't really have we don't have a, we don't have an in between kind of. Well, I guess
Yeah.
it's not so simple. Jesus is both God and his son, right?
Yep.
So how many people belong to Vive Church?
Well, right here in San Francisco, we see about 200 or so every Sunday.
Wow.
In our Palo Alto location, we definitely see a lot more than that, over 1,000.
Wow.
Sometimes peaking around 2,000.
What about,
And then say it again.
what about nationally?
Nationally, oh man, I think we're about hitting close to probably 2,000, 2,500 people nationally. A lot of our campuses, actually, this past year, we as a church launched 10 new locations around the world, which is, sorry, 5 new locations in 1 year, which is
Wow.
crazy. So now we're a church of 10 locations. And so each of those new locations is still growing and seeing more people. Our Milan and Rome campuses are doing some incredible things out there. But yeah, we're definitely still growing.
I'm going to get to the topic, which is faith in a time of crisis, but I want to learn more about your church. Why do you
Yeah.
think Vive Church is catching on so much with people, especially in a time where I think organized religion, for a lot of people is on a downswing?
Yeah.
It's a non-denominational church, but it is still a church. Why do you think people are joining this church? What do you think it is about?
I think it's very much for the same reason that I joined the church. Probably I grew up Seventh-day Adventist. I don't know if you ever heard of that religion.
Of course, we
Uh,
celebrate Shabbat on the same day.
yes,
I had to
and
take my SATs. I had to take my SATs with Seventh-day Adventists. It was just
yep,
human
because I took my SATs on a Sunday while everyone took theirs on
Me
a
too.
on a Saturday,
Yeah.
and so it was very religious. But like good parents, my parents made me go to church with them every single week, whether I believed or not. And I think that's the job of parents to really grow you up in what they believe. And but when I left, my parents' house, grew up, went to college, got on my own, it was when I started looking for something for myself. What did I believe in? What was I looking for? And I realized, man, I'm looking for something that feels fresh, feels new. It's something that feels like, man, it's really growing me as a person. And when we found our church, Vive Church, I think it was really what was really attractive to us was number one, it was a lot of young people, like people my age, and I was like, man, like they really love Jesus. But the messages were also really relevant. I think if anyone opens up the Bible and they're reading it, it can be very daunting, especially open up in the Old Testament. Like these are old words. If you got a King James version, no one speaks like this anymore. And so I want something that is gonna speak to me and what I'm going through right now. Like, I'm not, in battles, actual physical battles, but I'm going through things maybe of anxiety or, I'm losing my job, things like that. And so I want something that's going to speak to me right now in this situation. And what I immediately heard was messages that spoke directly to what I was going through, messages that felt like they were empowering me to step into the week. And so that's what I think is a very attractive to a lot of people. And then obviously the music, like our worship at our church is very powerful. It's songs that we've written and songs that have been written around the world that literally we put everything into to set an atmosphere so that people have an encounter with Jesus. And I think for a lot of people, music is that thing that kind of gets you in the mood, right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Like I was just on Instagram watching, the Instagram live with those Instagram live battles that they've been doing online. And I was like, man, like music really sets an atmosphere. And so
Yeah.
I think honestly, from the message to the worship is what draws and attracts people in a time like this because man, it's exactly what they're going through and exactly what they're looking for.
So thank you for answering that. I know these are kind of personal things, but the Bay Area is known for a lot of things, but it's
Hmm.
not known for its religious institutions, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's not.
people don't necessarily come to the Bay for the religious infrastructure of the Bay. In fact, one of the
Mm.
things I found is it feels like a very secular place. And as a
Yeah.
religious Jew, sometimes I've struggled to be like, is it okay for me to be here? Like, should I
Hmm.
not talk about it? So what's it
Yeah.
like leading a church in a place like San Francisco?
I'll say that initially was hard. Like it was like, what do we even do? our demographic, when I first moved to the Bay, we lived in San Jose. San Jose is very different from San Francisco. And so we got here, it's like, okay, well, it's different types of people. San Francisco is a very liberal city. It's a lot of, everyone is who they are. What you see on someone, literally what you see is often what you get. And I was like, okay, how do we reach these people? How do we feel like, we're meeting people exactly where they are? And I think, you know, the Bible often talks about loving your neighbor as yourself. And so if I love myself, man, I love my flaws, I love my mistakes, I love everything about myself. And so I was like, you know what, let's just attack San Francisco that same way. But when I love you, that doesn't mean that I accept everything. So that means that, I love you so much that I want to show you a different reality.
Yeah.
The mission of our church is so that people will be awakened to the reality of Jesus. And so everything that I want to show you is something different from maybe the life that you're living. And it's not my job to preach it on you and to push it on you and to force it on you. It's just my job to set an atmosphere where you can receive it. And then you have an opportunity to decide, hey, whether or not you want to accept it and whether or not you want to step into a life like that. And so more than anything, I think the greatest thing I've learned is just to love people and always extend invitations. When I see people, whether they look like me or they live like me, I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I think the greatest thing that preaches more than a Bible oftentimes or come to church on Sunday is just the way in which I interact with you. If I show you love, every time you see me, you're just gonna be, oh man, how you doing? Man, what is it that you do on the weekend? I'm like, oh well, actually, come check out church, man. This is where I'm at. And so I think that's the greatest way to honestly, you know, reach the people of our city.
Well, I'm sure the people that go to the church are lucky to have you. San Francisco is the birthplace. New Yorkers would fight against this, but some of us say it's the birthplace of the gay rights movement. Some of the first
Mm,
gay rights movements happened in
hmm.
our city, not far from where we are right now. A lot
Yeah.
of people oftentimes equate organized religion and the
Hmm.
church as being in opposition to the gay rights movement and gay people. What's VIVE Church's
Yeah.
stance on homosexuality?
Man, I get this question a lot often.
You're in the gay mecca. That's why I moved here. This is like gay church, kind of.
Oh my goodness, we get it a lot. And our value, when people come to church, we tell them our value is people. It means we love you and come on in exactly who you are. And our prayer is that you wouldn't just stay who you are. You would just continue to grow into the man or woman that God has called you to be. And so when you come to our church, whether you're black, gay, straight, whatever, man, we welcome you. And what we preach will always be the truth and what you see in the word. You'll never hear us blasting like, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. What we're going to be preaching from our platform is always love, and joy and peace and hope. And our desire is that, man, through that relationship with Jesus, you'll start to learn the truth of God. And so I don't think it's necessarily like a, man, if you're gay, you can't come to our church. But it's just, you just won't hear us preaching that.
Right.
Um,
But when
but
you
it's
talk
not
about
necessarily saying
growth,
you.
when you talk about growth and the truth of God, that's not
Mhm.
growth out of homosexual tendencies, is it?
No, I think it's more or less growth in the revelation in which you can catch from the word. And so I think, um, we do believe that, God has called us to live in a relationship, for marriage to be between a man and a woman. That's what we believe. Um, but it's not something that we necessarily say, oh man, you won't go to heaven if you lived a certain lifestyle. I can't tell you. I'm not God. I can't tell you exactly what he's going to do. But I
Mhm.
think oftentimes when it comes to, homosexuality and that lifestyle, a lot of people do immediately feel rejected when they come to the church because of that.
Right.
But the thing that we often preach in church is not so much like, don't be gay and don't live that lifestyle, but man, God wants to lead you to a life of purity. And
Mhm.
purity is so much greater than, this specific thing. Because here's the thing, like, a lie, we believe that, whether you lie, cheat, steal, those are all things that God hasn't called you to live. And so, man, if you're doing that, I'm gonna, call you out on that, and I'm gonna encourage you to, live a different lifestyle. But I think that, our more than anything, our job as a church is just to preach love. And I'll let you catch a revelation for yourself. And we'll preach what we know is the truth of God's word. but let God change hearts. Like I can't change you. I can't tell you what to do.
Well, I
That's
bet
not love.
you and I could get into this a whole lot more and a whole lot longer, but I want to get into, thank you for answering my general questions. I want
Yeah.
to get into being faith in a time of crisis. So
Mm,
we are being tested now in so many ways, politically, socially, and I think also probably religiously. We're in a time of pestilence, really. I mean,
hmm
this is plague. So where do you think what do you think the role of faith is right now in
mm.
the current crisis that we find ourselves
I think the role of faith is simply hope. You know, right now we're in a very much like it feels like a dark place. It feels like
in? Yeah.
we have no idea when we're going to get out of this shelter in place. We have no idea when we're going to get a vaccine. We have no idea when this thing is going to be over. And just based on what we see in front of us, it feels like, man, this thing is never going to end.
Yeah.
And I think the job of the church is to instill hope, because here's what we believe. We believe that God has good plans for us. The Bible says plans to give you a hope in the future, right? But it's hard to believe that, and it's hard to really see that when, man, all you see in front of you is, man, people dying, us being in shelter in place, people losing their jobs.
Right.
And, it feels like, all right, well, God's not in this situation. In fact, I recently lost someone in my family, and, the first thing that people say
Coronavirus?
is, man, yeah, to coronavirus.
God, I'm so sorry, Rob.
Yeah, it's my family's going through it, and I think the first thing people often say is, man, you know what, God, everything happens for a reason. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like, God did not plan this. There's no specific reason in this. However, God can use it for something greater, and what is often produced in seasons like this is strength, perseverance, greater faith, because you're like, man, God got me through it, and I know He's going to get me through it again. And then even things like the community coming together. San Francisco is coming together in, man, a glorious way. I don't think I've ever experienced a city like this where it feels like everybody is rooting for each other. What do you need? We got you. And
Mhm.
so, I think the job of a church, to answer your question shortly, is just to provide hope. On our truck that we drive around the city for our church, it actually says there's hope here. And anyone who sees it, they're like, where's here? I'm like, it's in the church. Like, our job is to be a signpost of hope, to remind you that, man, God's in this and He hasn't left you. And
Mhm.
so that's really what the church is supposed to be.
I mean, you're right. Hope right now is in extreme demand. And I think every day we're being tested more and more, and probably hour by hour
Hmm.
through this, how we can continue to have hope and inspiration. My Orthodox Jewish rabbi father will probably, would be shocked for me to ask this next question, but what do you think the teachings of Jesus can teach people right now as folks um, try to find hope in their own life?
The teachings of Jesus.
Yeah.
Um,
Something I think
there's
you'll
actually
know too about.
there's actually a scripture, and it's actually from Paul, where he kind of references the fact that we will go. Actually, it's in James. Count it all joy when you face tough situations. It's crazy because it's like, why would you ever count it as joy when I go through, a season like this? Like, there's no joy in this.
Mhm.
But I think the joy that you can find in a season like this is that it's going to produce something on the inside of me. And so, if there's anything that we can get from teachings of Jesus in this season is, man, love your neighbor as yourself. And so that means, man, if you're going through something, whether you've got the sickness, whether you have family who's got it, or you've lost your job, or anything like that, the greatest thing that we can do right now is to love our neighbors. I
Mhm.
live in a condo and we have tons of neighbors. And I don't think before this situation that a lot of people knew each other. Most people just walk past each other.
Right. Right.
And right now, yeah, we're still social distancing, so we see each other and we kind of walk across the street.
Yeah.
It's a little awkward situations. However, everyone's stopping to talk to each other, and they're like, "Hey, what do you need?" Someone will post on Facebook, "Hey,
Yeah.
I'm doing a grocery run. Does anyone need anything? Does anyone need toilet paper? I got a lot of toilet paper." Um, and so I think the greatest thing we can get from this season right now is, man, loving each other. It doesn't matter what you've done, where you're from. Like, right now, we're all going through the same thing
Mhm.
together. So if there's one thing we can agree on, is, man, coronavirus sucks. The season sucks. However, man, we can come through this together. That hashtag we're in this together. Like
Yeah.
it's so true.
Hey, folks who are tuning in, if you have a question for Pastor Graham, Rob, you can type it in at any time and I'll ask the question. Now is a good time to type in your questions for him. I want to talk also about historically the place that faith, specifically faith in a higher power of being, has played in times of crisis.
Hmm.
We are living in an age of secularism, right? Where
Yeah.
organized religion, church membership, all these things across the board, our generation is not going to church or to synagogue or to the mosque as much as the generation before, at least not in the United States.
Hmm.
And so I feel like taking a step back, I feel like before this trend, right, organized religion had a hold on us. You know what I mean? It was a
Hmm.
very big part of culture and society. So you can imagine that this is not the first pandemic. And when pandemics happened before, religion was the first place people went. But now we're
Hmm.
living in this age where religion is not necessarily the end all be all. So how do you think that affects our coping mechanisms and our ability
Mm.
and how human beings are navigating this crisis, since
Mm.
religion is changing, especially in our generation? I don't know how old,
Yeah.
but I think we seem like we're in the same generation.
Yeah, about the same generation. I think it's a good point. You mentioned that, church used to be the place where everyone went.
Yeah,
Something happened, oh, I'm going to the church.
right.
Something happened in my family, they're like, oh, we're going to church and we're going to sit through a service and we're going to come out this better. And I do think right now, a lot of people might have other ways in which they will try to adapt to what the situation is that they're going through, or they're trying to get through it, right? Like coping mechanisms, as you mentioned. Maybe I'll just go to, I don't know, a sauna. I don't know if people go into saunas right now,
I
but
think unless they own the sound, and they're probably not.
I don't know what it is that people are doing. Whether maybe right now they're tuning into different things. Maybe their coping mechanism is to look at good stories on social media. I don't know what it is, but I think that one of the things I've learned in this season right now is that the greatest thing the church can do is to share stories of hope and faith and love to get people through it. Because traditionally, yeah, people, they don't want to come to a church because they're like, it's religious and,
Right,
they're not going to welcome me. So I don't want to step
right,
in.
right.
But the glorious thing about technology is that, man, we can do things like this. And everyone right now is probably on their phones, on Instagram. Instagram lives pop up on your phone. I'm tuning in. And so what I can do is try to get something in front of you that points you to Jesus and reminds you of his love and his grace, and his plans for you. And so if I can get that in front of you, it can remind you of a life that is free from, worry, and not necessarily free from worry, but a life that isn't led by worry or fear, but a life that knows, like, all right, cool, God's got me. And so I think the role of the church, honestly, at least even in this season and probably even beyond this now, is to find ways to leverage technology and leverage the tools that we have to get love, faith, hope, and love in front of people. Like that's the biggest thing. Because what are you getting on social media? What are you getting on other places right now? The news. I don't even tune to the news anymore because it's not great stories, right? Like it's not the greatest news of, hey, this thing's not ending and all this stuff. But I want to hear more stories of, like, okay, what's the good things that's coming out of it? What's some success stories? Tell me about someone in the healthcare, who, maybe they were looking for something, or they were like, man, I don't know if I find meaning in my job, and then boom, now they have real meaning because, man, they're actually saving lives in a very tangible way. And so I think that's the role of the church.
There were some very beautiful and powerful videos of doctors kind of going into rooms and praying together, which
Mm,
you don't really see where faith interacts with medicine and the medical practice. But of course, our bodies are such a miracle, and there's so many things
yeah,
happening in hospitals. I did find those videos very compelling. You mentioned
yeah,
technology. Are you still preaching to your flock? I don't know your congregation. Really
yeah.
past the
So
block, I guess that's a thing in this
yeah,
time. Like, are you still having church every Sunday and communicating through Zoom or something?
yeah. So our church, as I said earlier, is 10 locations, and our location. Our broadcast location is Palo Alto, and that's where our lead pastor he preaches from. And the model in which we do church is where, for most Sundays, you would come to San Francisco and you would see you would have local worship, live worship, and you would hear a live message from our lead pastor coming from Palo Alto.
Oh,
And so that was streamed around the world.
so you guys
In
were using
Italy,
Zoom. You were using Zoom before Zoom was Zoom.
we already were, man. And
Ahead of the
it's
curve.
beautiful because we're a global church, and even when we launched Italy, it was beautiful because we got to do worship together in English and Italian, and beautiful thing coming together. And right now, we're still streaming services every week. So every Sunday, we have a message from our pastor. We have worship, and right now, obviously, in the pandemic, can't do so much live. So a lot of it is pre-recorded during the week, and looks a little bit different. Our current series right now is called Shot on iPhone, because it's all shot on iPhone. And we had the worship team in different places, and we just brought it all together in some beautiful and amazing ways. But yeah, we're still meeting every week. Every throughout the week, I'm still connecting with those who call our church home, calling them, encouraging them, praying over them, and still trying to keep everyone engaged so that it doesn't feel like we're lonely. Because you know, uh, all of us who have jobs right now, who are fortunate to still have jobs, we're doing Zoom meetings
Hmm.
all day, and it can get very old. And someone else
Yeah,
actually get on a video call, you're like, I don't know if I want to do that.
yeah.
And so trying to find ways to mix it up and still make people feel like, man, we're still doing this together. Because fortunately, I'm married, so I got a roommate. She's
Yeah.
my wife. She's my forever roommate. But some people, they live alone, and they're like, man, like I can't even. Who am I doing this with? And so,
Are you?
um, you know,
Sorry to interrupt.
no, go ahead.
I just have a burning question. Are you seeing a lot of coordination amongst different religious organizations right now in San Francisco to deliver food, deliver messages, kind of bond together? Are you guys part of the Interfaith Council? Like, are you seeing a lot of that happen within the city?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of churches come together. I'm on this group chat with a lot of pastors, and a lot of pastors coming together, sharing ideas, sharing ways to, figure out financial issues. Obviously, right now because things look a little differently, sharing, advice on how to do streaming services and offering, what we have, as far as getting engaged with the community, sharing tons of opportunities that we're all being a part of. Right now, our church partnered with City Team San Francisco,
Mhm.
and Christian Wang. Shout out to Christian Wang, director of City Team, and being able to provide resources from our churches to them to help our community keep thriving.
Well, operator Jupiter, if you don't mind putting the website to Vive Church in the chat box for those who are tuning in, if folks are interested in learning more about Vive Church. Also, this question of the importance of faith in the time of crisis is deep and personal. And I just want to thank you for providing people an opportunity who are looking to faith right now, that opportunity to find it in what you do and in your congregation, your community. It is strange, right? Because so often when bad shit's going on, we go to our congregation, we go to our community, and we hold each other, right?
Yeah,
Get
yeah,
that love and support in these
yeah.
places. And right now we're really being tested, Rob, because people need that support more than ever, but they can't go to church. They can't go to,
Hmm.
they can't go to their yoga studio if that's their
Yep.
church. So we have to be adaptable and moldable. And thank you for doing that.
Oh man.
I'm going to give you the last word, but before we do that, I just want to point people to our sponsor link. It's joinit.org/o/Manny's. You can go in the chat box and you'll see the link to Vive Church, and you'll also see, operator, if you don't mind adding it to the chat box, the link right above my head. It's joinit.org/o/Manny's. We're asking everyone who's on these calls to become a sponsor. I'm looking to get 36 new sponsors by the end of the week to help us make it through this recovery. You can go to joinit.org/o/Manny's. And also want to thank my team, Jupiter, Ram, and Sam, and also do a special shout out to Tilly, who's on the call, who is a part of
Yes,
the
Tilly.
church and is a former employee of ours at Manny's. And we're proud that she's, doing what she's doing. And I'm glad that she's a part of your church. And thank you for bringing her onto your team. She's wonderful. We love Tilly, and we miss her at Manny's, but glad she's in good hands with you all and Vive Church. And I just want to thank you, Rob, so much for spending your evening with us, and give you the last word if there's anything you want to close us with.
No, thank you, man. I think honestly, this is truly an honor. I love any opportunity I get to, share what I do, share what we get to do as a church, and honestly, make more connections in the community. I think this is a really great connection. I got to come out and check out Manny's once this whole thing
Please.
is,
Yeah.
over. I got to come.
Yes.
I was reading online. I was like, oh man, like this is so cool. This is a cool place, and I saw the interview you did with Mayor London Breed, and I think obviously you're built for influence. So, I think more and more opportunities going to continue to come to see Manny's grow into the full vision that I know you have for it. And I'm just glad that we get to be a part of it, man. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Rob, for all that you do and for spending your evening with us. And thank you to everyone that's tuned in. This is our Monday, and we will be back tomorrow with more conversations. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye, Rob.
Bye.